Hey guys, my name's Nick. I'm a Microsoft Certified Expert Administrator. Create a lot of content for MSPs, and this is part 4 of a 5-part series I've created to show you how to map Microsoft 365 business solutions to the NIST Cybersecurity framework. So in each video, I'm going through and I'm focusing in on one core function, and we are looking at all the categories of that core function, showing you the questions you should be asking both yourself and your customer to align better with the framework and bring awareness to around what we need to do. I'm looking at mapping the solution to that particular category from M365 business. And then lastly, I'm giving you some action items that you can take, whether that be processes, procedures, or some of the security settings that you can turn on, or DOP settings or conditional access settings you can turn on within the solution to help you, again, align with the framework. So this video series, we're going to look at the respond core function. And with respond, this is a definition straight from NIST. And it says, develop and implement appropriate activities to take action regarding a detected cybersecurity incident. So the first category we have here is response planning. With response planning, we have the response processes and procedures are executed and maintained to ensure timely response to detected cybersecurity events. So when you look at this, I think you need to focus in and drill down into how you triage tickets in the company. When an incident comes up, what are the methods of communication that you've given to the customer of which they report that issue? And what does SLAs look like? What is your common response? Is it consistent over time? How is that interaction with your end customer until you get that ticket resolved? What does that look like today? With Microsoft, you have a bit of a myriad of solutions that I feel like aren't directly related to response planning, because that's more of an internal process issue you need to figure out. But the solutions themselves allow you to lock down your assets in a secure way in which I feel like the response can be a bit more calm, in the sense that everything's on fire, but you have protections in place. A common example I can give to this is using a conditional access policy to prevent access to corporate data on a device that's in an unhealthy state from an Intune policy standpoint. So even if that device is infected, they can't access corporate resources and they can't spread that malicious content across to other users, in the sense of sending them an email or sending them a Teams message or whatever it may be. You can track trends in the Security and Compliance Center as far as any malicious content that is being detected, the types of attack methods being used. So you can be more proactive in protecting against that, and you can refine your policies that are in place as well too. This is, again, I showed this in the last video with Detect, but you want to periodically review the threat dashboard and see if there's trends, see if you have targeted users in the company constantly getting attacked, and improving your awareness and security training around this as well too, so you can better protect them in the long run. So then this is, again, a business case where you've set up a conditional access policy to block access to corporate data on devices that are in an unhealthy state. So we showed this in the protect core function video. There's that user who's trying to log in to access their data, and they're getting a message that says this device isn't compliant, please contact your administrator. So at least in that particular case, you have some more time to figure out a way to triage the incident and come to a conclusion without the fear of knowing that this is becoming an outbreak and I need to lock this down immediately. So some of the action items: review how you triage tickets. I mentioned in the last video, even if you're a smaller shop and you're doing most of the task, you should still come up with a proper triage process to go across. Maybe it's a Kanban board of how you resolve an incident or the things that you do to get to a conclusion. You're tracking the different threats that are coming across the organization. You're constantly reevaluating how you're resolving them. You're giving them a risk score. You're giving them a risk category, so you know what kinds of response templates you want to apply to that and how high it's going to impact the business. So this is something that you predefined based off of the business activities and the known threats that are out there today. And this will only get better over time as you implement this process across all of your customers. Secondly, you want to be proactive in reviewing the trends in the threat dashboard. I mentioned in the last video, quarterly basis may be good, but it all depends on how much staff you have, how much time you have to devote to this, but I think it's definitely something that you should be incorporating when you're reviewing vulnerabilities and assessments around that. Next category we have here is communications. Response activities are coordinated with internal and external stakeholders. So with this one, it's really about the communication flow between you and your customer and defining the roles and responsibilities for when an incident happens. So how do they report that to you? What is your typical response? Is it consistent? Do they know that you're going to be responding? Do they know what expectations look like around this particular incident? Have it defined and don't deviate from that. Once you start to deviate, they'll wonder why things have changed. And maybe you're doing things really quickly just because you wanted to. You don't necessarily need to. When you stop doing that or you don't do that one time, they're going to be coming back to you and saying, why did it take you so long? And you're frustrated then because you were just saying, hey, I was doing this as a service because I had the bandwidth to go do it. We're really strict on bandwidth now. But if you define those policies and you define what criteria you're going to meet and give them those expectations, I feel like it's a lot better correspondence for you in the long run. And that's where you get into the consistency and the communication and training around when they detect a threat, how is it reported to you? Is there somebody in the organization that's known as the key security officer that relays that message, or how do they report that to you? That has to be consistent over time as well. M365 solution, advanced threat protection comes with a self-reporting capability that you can build and put into Outlook, where they can self-report phishing emails, and you can review those in part of the threat management dashboard as well too, when somebody does that, to see if it was a false positive or what kinds of emails that they're getting that they're reporting. You want to see that. You want them to start adopting it and be more precautious in the sense of them getting phished. So you have Security Center to go view all that data and review it with them. This is the report message. You can specify it to certain users if you really wanted to, and you can also choose the deployment method. In most cases, it's going to be fixed, where they don't have the option to add it or not, but you do have that ability to configure here. So with the business case, user sees an email sent from an email address they don't recognize, and it's telling them they want an Amazon gift card. So the user can self-report that from the Outlook client, and they don't have to leave, and then you have that. You can set alerts around that as well too if you want to go investigate immediately. So action items here, make sure you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities for communicating an incident to the customer. Compliance regulations are certain restrictions around this. You need to have everything documented. When you detect an incident, it needs to be reported to the end users in a certain amount of time. So if you do follow under certain compliance regulations, make sure you go take a look at that and review. Review the ticket correspondence, ensure consistent messaging and procedures are enforced. So it should be a consistent theme and look when they go and do this. And if you ever change that, you need to give proper expectations before you make that switch. Turn on that report message add-in for Outlook. It's something that you can find and configure, but I think it's beneficial for them to have that right in Outlook. And then review those user-submitted reports on a periodic basis. It may not be something that you need to address immediately, but again, once you're doing your quarterly reviews of all of your policies, things like that, and looking for trends, it's a good time to get that done. The next category we have here is analysis. So analysis is conducted to ensure adequate response and support recovery activities. So when you're looking at the response plans, you want to look at the categories of incidents. Do you have categories defined for risk? And with those categories, are there preset lists of things that you always do, or messaging that's given in those certain scenarios as well too, to the end users based off the category? The second piece, if you're related to a compliance level firm, if you get audited, can easily provide documentation of how we respond to an incident and the outcomes that customer does. Story came out where an MSP had a customer that failed an audit, and because they had failed that audit, the subsequent compliance regulatory firm went and audited every single one of that MSP's customers. So be aware of that and have these things in place. That's a scary thing for me to say to you, but it is something that you do need to be aware of and get your house in order, as well as from the sense of starting at your own MSP, getting these policies in place, getting these procedures defined so that you can track all of this, especially when it comes to compliance. Can we easily identify and impact certain issues? If not, what controls can we put in place to better protect ourselves from those types of incidents? So with this one, you need to understand when somebody opens up a ticket, the level of risk that's involved, and you've predefined that based off the criticality of the app, of the criticality of the user role that's opened up the case. So you need to better define what these look like and constantly evaluate. And then what controls can you put in place to better protect yourself from those types of incidents? So maybe you do have a bad experience, but that's where you get into looking at retroactive meetings and things of that nature. So action items here: review how your solution fits into your security stack itself. These new security features that come part of M365 Business may be something that you can integrate very easily, or you've had existing legacy systems in there that it's going to be a little bit harder to configure. But look at classifying these incidents based on severity and periodically review those. The landscape's shifting. Rely on Microsoft and all of their data that they're collecting in a certain sense to shift with them. They provide reports. They have a lot of great technology out from the security standpoint, but definitely incorporate this into your entire security stack. Mitigation here: activities are performed to prevent the expansion of an event, mitigate its effects, and eradicate the incident. So this is where I think you should constantly be evaluating: are you identifying new vulnerabilities? How are they documented? And are you assigning them a risk category? When you guys detect something new, what is the documentation tool that you guys all access at the MSP? A lot of times it's IT Glue, or it's Line Guard or something like that, where you have all this protected, but you want to see this as far as new vulnerabilities coming through, that you're tracking that at a central location, and it's very easy to access, so that when new techs come on and they have a similar incident with a case, that information can be sourced very easily for them to review. So the second one here is, do we define how to contain incidents as part of our category definitions? And if you're not already, this is something that you should be adding to your documentation internally when you have a new vulnerability that shows up, or you have a case that you see as a common issue. Even if it's not common, you want to have a column within that particular knowledge base article that defines what you did for containment. How was that related? Or when you're looking at vulnerabilities, think about how you can contain this as quickly as possible, what that looks like for the end users as well. So with M365, you want to leverage, again, all the 6.5 billion endpoints that they're gathering from the data perspective. You can set up conditional access policies that would prevent some new vulnerabilities from existing, in the sense of not being on a healthy device, users in an unhealthy state, or an untrusted location where you may not always know what's going on. It's an ever-evolving landscape, but you're putting in these policies in place to better protect the assets in the corporation. You assign new threats a risk category. So this may be something you've already defined, but if you haven't had a spreadsheet or documentation relating to the risk categories that you come across and what you want those to look like from a ticketing system within your company, it's definitely something that I would evaluate and piggyback off of peers in the industry, other MSPs of like size or larger, to be honest. So you can see what they're doing today. Maybe you conform that if you're a smaller MSP, what makes sense for you in your business. And then track insights. So make sure that you have the capabilities to track new vulnerabilities, keep up to date with what's going on in the market. And again, that's where you leverage certain Microsoft data. There's a negative perception behind Microsoft because of them changing things so quickly, but they honestly have the most data coming in to better protect you. So definitely look out for things that they are identifying and heightened level security solutions from them as well. So with the security graph, you're looking across their entire stack, looking at users, endpoints, user data, cloud apps, and infrastructure to gather user activity, sign-ins, IP addresses that are malicious, countries, links, everything like that is being tracked, so it's better protecting you in the long run. Business case here. This is actually a real business case. So this is something that's come up recently in the industry. Increase in OAuth phishing attacks have been spotted. A lot of reports, OAuth phishing attacks where attackers given access to users' account and is secretly extracting all the data without the user's knowledge. So it needs to be reviewed. If you guys have experienced this, you may not know how to deal with it, but others do. So that's where leveraging a community can really help you out as well too, in identifying these things and assigning them a risk score and vulnerability and having a good way to mitigate them as well. So some action items here: review your processes for how you document new vulnerabilities and threats into your company. Evaluate what you document today. What other columns can you use in there? The great one that I don't think many people are doing is, how did you mitigate it? How did you go in and break it down to the sense where it was contained really quickly? How can you do that as quick as possible for new vulnerabilities? Should be always something that you're asking yourself. Next category here is improvements, last one actually. So organizational response activities are improved by incorporating lessons learned from current and previous detection response activities. So all this comes back, are you doing retroactive? When something goes wrong, are you guys actually having a meeting about it afterwards to say, where did we screw up, in the sense of maybe your internal process, or how did this vulnerability get through in another sense? And that may be something that you just do at the MSP level, but in a lot of cases it may involve some end user training as well, if it was human error on their behalf or something where they needed to evaluate that. So this could be for those security breaches, but it also could be from a data loss perspective too. Like, why were you sending this data out? How did it fall across our policies? What policies do we need to put into place so this doesn't happen again? Having these little retroactive meetings don't even have to be that long, but you have a stand up and you talk about each phase of what went wrong and you document all of that, so that the other users that come into the organization have the ability to easily search for that. And that's again where you're creating such a concrete foundation of what you want as far as your policies and your vulnerability assessments and everything like that. Even if you're a one-man MSP, you have the ability to scale because your foundation is built. It's repeatable, it's trainable, it's very easy to pick up in the sense of a new employee coming in. So you want to build these things. This is more important than anything, in my opinion. If you're looking at thriving as a company, you have to have these bedrock foundations. It'll honestly help you sleep at night as well too, knowing that you've done all you can to protect. You have great processes in place. If you guys have ever read The E-Myth Revisited, this is something that author talks about in that book. The franchise prototype method to building a business is actually something that's most successful because they've defined this blueprint, this operational manual of how they conduct business. So it's really important that you guys evaluate this and create a bedrock for your organization. So some action items there. Definitely, if you're not already, conduct retro meetings internally. For larger incidents, if you're smaller, they may be something that you feel like it's really important for you guys to have a stand-up around. What went wrong? What can we do together? Can we document this? Is this a new vulnerability? How can we contain it faster, so that you're being more proactive and this is becoming first of mind for the organization when they're going through every incident. And it's a trainable process as well too for an employee. So that's everything in this video. We've got one more to go. If you have any questions or comments about what we covered today, or would like to discuss things more, feel free to comment below on this video. Last video, we're going to go over the recover core function, and we're going to go through and talk about some next steps as far as what you should be doing and phasing this out to your customers and the kinds of conversations you should be having. I'll see you in the next video.